to your knowledge, did the president or his company ever inflate assets or revenues?
Yes.
And was that done with the president's knowledge or direction?
Everything was done with the knowledge and at the direction of Mr. Trump.
That was Donald Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, testifying about the Trump Organization before the House Oversight Committee back in 2019. Apart from Allen Weisselberg, who just pleaded guilty to 15 felonies, there are a few people outside of the immediate Trump family who know the company better. Joining me now is Michael Cohen. He's now the host of the Mea Culpa podcast and the author of the upcoming book, Revenge: How Donald Trump Weaponized the United States Department of Justice Against His Critics. Michael, I'm always happy to have you here. I always appreciate your candor because sometimes that's exactly what people need to know, right? So let's get into it. Allen Weisselberg, he has to testify at the Trump Organization's upcoming trial in October. That's a part of his plea deal. But based upon what you said before the House Oversight Committee, isn't it inevitable that he's going to implicate Donald Trump directly?
So it seems that way. You know, I've received, after the Weisselberg plea, I've received no less than maybe 50 phone calls from journalists all over the world. It's not even just in this country. And many of them turn around and say, well, I've heard that the questions that they're going to be asking Weisselberg are merely about the apartments, the cars, the perks that were given, and not about anything else. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that would probably be about the worst move that Alvin Bragg could make, including dropping the case against Trump in the first place, simply because here's what happens. The guy's getting 5 months for 15 counts over God knows how many years. It's close to $2 million. It was a scheme within which to defraud. We know that his sons were also being looked at, so clearly they must now get a pass. On top of that, he is required to testify. Why would you limit the extent of the testimony that prosecutors want to ask and only ask questions about, you know, the perks that were given to him, which is what's now going to put Allen Weisselberg in Rikers Island for at least a minimum of 100 days.
So, Michael, that is the real head scratcher, right? Because as a former prosecutor, I look at it. I remember having analysis. I've done legal analysis on the fact that you had Jennifer Weisselberg, who was able to talk about where the bodies were buried. We know that she gave docs. You gave documents. You gave testimony. I mean, you've met God knows how many times with people, prosecutors, et cetera, congressional committees. You just talked about Weisselberg's kids having exposure here. There were so many pressure points, so many potential Achilles heels that Bragg's office could have pressed to get something meatier than what we're hearing now, which is the 5 months. But, you know, Allen Weisselberg, I don't know, maybe I call it credit, Michael. What could possibly be motivating him to remain loyal to Donald Trump and not flip against Donald Trump?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to it. Clearly, there's got to be something wrong with him. You know, I can only call it maybe stupidity in the fact that he saw what happened to me. Now, you know, in the book that you mentioned, Revenge, which is be coming out in October, I want to really let you know what's going on in that book. What it does is it talks about how Donald Trump weaponized the Justice Department to go against his critics. All right. This is all part of the Donald Trump plan. Somehow or another, he gets people to take the fall for him, including myself, and took responsibility for things that I actually never did. Yes, campaign finance violation at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald Trump. Yes, that's all true. The rest of the stuff, not accurate. So your question, why is it, and I get this all the time, why is it that people stay loyal to him when they watch their entire lives get destroyed, get thrown right down the dumpster while Donald Trump is sitting stuffing his face at Mar-a-Lago? It makes absolutely no sense. It took me going to prison to wake up and to extricate myself from the cult of Donald Trump. And I'm thankful that it did happen.
You know, Michael, you talk about Mar-a-Lago. We always reference you as former personal counsel to Donald Trump. You've heard in the news media reports since that warrant was executed in Mar-a-Lago, the struggles that Donald Trump has been having to secure competent counsel to defend him. Why would any lawyer with a license that wants to remain a barred attorney, why would any lawyer actually take up the mantle to defend Donald Trump, seeing what happened to people like you, people who were loyal, who used their legal acumen to be able to assist Donald Trump in his business dealings and his other dealings?
Right. So as you're well aware, everyone is entitled to counsel. Everyone is entitled to a defense. I see it a little bit different. It's not that they don't want to lose their license. And Donald, of course, is a disgraceful, non-empathetic, narcissistic sociopath that you don't want to represent. That's not the reason why he's having a hard time getting competent counsel to work for him. The reason is because for the last 45 to 50 years, since he started the Trump Organization, he has basically stiffed virtually every single law firm that he has come into contact with. So the lawyers aren't thinking more about, hey, do I represent Donald or not? You know, I don't like him. I don't like his policies. I don't like his racist, sexist, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic rhetoric. That's not why they're not taking the case, because they would love to take a case where they're going to be making a lot of money, even though that they don't like the person or the policy. They're doing it because they know they're not going to get paid. They know he is an absolutely impossible client to deal with because he wants to run his own litigation, despite the fact he has no idea what he's doing. Right? So why would you want to take on a difficult client when you know that you're not going to get paid as well? That's the problem for Donald.
So, Michael, also Alan Weisselberg at the Trump Organization, as you know, he didn't operate in a vacuum. We know that he was doing things at the direction of, for the benefit of, any type of, phrase you want to put of and for Donald Trump. But if Weisselberg doesn't implicate Trump directly in this trial, do you think it's possible that he could implicate the Trump children, for example, or somebody in the former president's family or inner circle? And
well, in fact, everybody should be concerned about that testimony. Do I think it's possible that Donald does not get implicated in Weisselberg's responses? The answer is no. Why? Because something I've said to you before, I've said on multitude of shows, nothing went on at the Trump Organization. To the same extent, nothing went on in the White House without the knowledge and at the direction of Donald J. Trump. Nothing. And when I mean nothing, I'm talking about if there were going to be pencils purchased or paper clips, Donald Trump knew about it because he signed every single check. Almost every single check went to his desk for signature. The only ones that didn't were the reoccurring ones like phone bills and things like that. If they were a new invoice, Donald Trump personally signed each and every check. People couldn't believe it. He'd have a stack of checks, yay big, sitting on his desk every single day. So is it possible that the district attorney, the prosecutors don't ask him? Well, in the creation of the personal financial statements, which are fugazi, that the numbers don't add up, that they're not accurate, et cetera, et cetera. Did Donald Trump know that the information provided in those personal financial statements were inaccurate? And did he use those documents in order to obtain loans and benefits, whether it's insurance benefits, et cetera? And the answer has to be yes. So he's not the only one that was involved. There are many, many people at the Trump Organization, the chief operating officer, Matt Calamari. He got the exact same perks as Alan Weisselberg did. So I think he's potentially up, on the chopping block. The kids, the same thing. So I think that there's going to be a multitude of investigations that come out of the Alan Weisselberg sentencing hearings.
Michael, I want to ask you for an update on your lawsuit. You mentioned your book that's coming out very soon, Revenge, but you sued because it was the weaponization of the DOJ. The irony doesn't escape many of us, right? The fact that Trump is now complaining that the current DOJ is being weaponized against him. But can you briefly get us caught up to speed on what's going on with your lawsuit that you filed against Donald Trump, former Attorney General William Barr, and others for revoking your home confinement, extending your prison sentence, and what you have alleged was retaliation for publishing your first book?
Yeah, so Katie, let me say this to you. I'm not the one who alleged it. I do, of course, allege it, or I reiterate it in the complaint against as you rightfully stated, the Department of Justice, U.S. government, Donald Trump, Bill Barr, and a multitude of other people. That statement came from Judge Alvin K. Hellerstein, the judge here at the Southern District of New York, who saw exactly what was going on and, commented in a relatively short time period during a hearing that this is nothing shy of retaliation by the president or by Bill Barr against a U.S. citizen in order to prevent him from exercising his First Amendment constitutional rights. So where are we? Approximately 3 weeks ago, we had a hearing. We are waiting for Judge Lyman, who is the sitting judge in this case, to rule. Of course, government made motions to dismiss the complaint, which, of course, is what they do. Alina Habba, Trump's attorney, got up and using the same failed, foolish, ridiculous argument, she comes out and she claims that you cannot sue Donald Trump because he has absolute immunity. I mean, she's lost that argument, I think now on something like 7 or 8 cases, but yet she continues to use it, thinking one day, maybe one day, it'll be a good defense for Donald.
I don't know about that. I mean, you and I as lawyers, we know that one's not going to fly. Michael, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. I'm going to say thank you again for your candor, your transparency. You're always very willing to call it the way that it is. You call the balls and the strikes the way that they should be. I do want to remind people, though, before we go, that the DA's office is not going to go into this October trial blind or without certain ammunition other than Allen Weisselberg. They have all the financials, as we know from Mazars, et cetera. So there's a lot of paper that's going to go into this trial in October.
A lot of
and I think that's
a lot of paper.
A lot.
Yeah. And I want to tell you,
I think that's going to buttress
as well. Yeah, I provided additional documents as well to them. They have a multitude. The truth is, they didn't even need Allen Weisselberg. They have so much documentary evidence to hold a multitude of people accountable. That's why Mark Pomerantz and Carrie Dunn walked away after Alvin Bragg came in and allowed the Trump case to expire. So, Katie, it's always great to see you, and it's always important for me to continue to speak truth to power.
And I appreciate that, Michael. Thanks for being here today.